Sonya Walger, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's such an immense honor to have you on. I've been such a big fan of yours for a really long time. You're probably not going to believe me when I say, but I discovered you on Sleeper Cell because I don't
Wow.
know when I was young that like Showtime was kind of my thing, and I love
Uh-huh.
that show and like your relationship with Darwin and that show. I don't think it ever got the justice it deserved, and you you really
Thank
impressed
you.
me, because I talk about this a lot with actors on this podcast, and sometimes the actors that I love most aren't the ones that are the series regulars in a series that I discover. They're the ones that come in and they're able to make such a unique stamp on their character
Hmm.
and I hate using the word little, but what minimal amount of time they might have on screen and your energy. You came in like a titan. I was like this woman's amazing.
Wow,
And then
thank you.
following your career, CSI, you've done so many amazing things, and now For All Mankind. I mean, it's another thing I've spoken about, and sometimes I feel like it really bums me out that we live in such a content saturated time, because For All Mankind is one of the most exceptional shows I've ever seen, and what you do with Molly Cobb, it
Oh,
is some of the finest work I have ever seen from an
oh,
actor in my life. And
wow.
if I were in charge of all the bullshit that goes into awards, you would win every single one of them. I mean, it's just you know we people talk about writing, for strong female characters and doing that, and that's great, but a lot of the times it's forced and it doesn't work. And what those writers were able to do, and what you just rose to the occasion, and it impressed me so much. It was a coup. It was like watching lightning strike over and over again. And I just I'm not here to, I swear, I'm not here to, like, I'm not getting paid for this, but I'm just such a big fan, and I have so much gratitude for the work that you do.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to pay you for all of that. I think your 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 your
Whoa,
sh-
we'll
your
send this to the
shows
FYC.
totally. Your show is not well named. There is nothing despairing about being an actor on this show. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
no,
just
it's a funny inverted title, but I'm sure we'll get into despair because we're gonna start
sure.
from the beginning. You grew up
Yeah.
in the UK, right?
I did. I grew up in London, and went. I do not come from an acting family. No one in my family does it or has anything to do with it, really. And I went to a boarding school and quite academic, sort of rigorous institutions. And then I went to Oxford and I studied.
So if it's okay, we'll go
Yeah,
even slow. So like, if you don't mind, what did your
yeah.
parents do?
Oh, so my mum's a nursery school teacher,
Okay.
and has been my whole life, and has her own school. And my dad, it's always such a tricky one. My dad died a few years ago. My dad was from
I'm
Argentina,
so
and
sorry.
thank you, and was a sort of crazy adventurer who did so many things that I'm actually writing a book about all the things my
Oh,
father
that's
did.
so beautiful.
um, I don't know that it will be beautiful, but it will be interesting. That's for sure. So he was a crazy, larger than life human being who did many things and travelled and got into trouble and went to jail and had multiple children and multiple marriages and
Ooh.
lived all over the world. So I had this very steady mum who remarried, and my stepfather is a very steady, lovely man who works in insurance, and so I had this very dual life of either being with my mum and my stepdad, and then they went on to have my little brother,
Wow.
and that was a sort of metronome of familiarity and a very boundaried, safe place. And then I would go and visit my dad and have madcap adventures with him.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. You
it
had
was a
this
bit of both.
dual world. I'm also a child of divorce, so I know what it's like to have those both families. And talk to me, because obviously you living in London is the cultural epicenter of theater and arts and capitalism, So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about, what was your early relationship to the arts? Did you grow up going to the West End and seeing plays? Like, where
I
did this?
did. My parent. I was always been a big reader, and so books have always been the thing that I love most. And I think as an only child, my brother didn't arrive till I was 13, so it was a long time on my own. So books were really the thing that I loved most. And then movies, and my mum would always make sure that even if we didn't have money, we had money to go to the theatre. So we'd go and see, you know, My Fair Lady or whatever the musical was. Starlight Express, I remember, was. Did that come here? It was a musical on roller skates. It was.
I'm sure it did. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
that was a huge thing. So yeah, we used to go to the theatre, and then it was something my dad and I would do on our own, because I think it's an easy thing for a divorced dad to do with his kid, is to take them to the movies. It's particularly if it's a girl and you're not sharing sport. I think a movie is such a sort of easy thing to do. So we would go to this little movie theatre in London that only showed kids movies, and we would go and watch, and it was amazing, and it was all red leather and gilt, like it was a proper old theatre that had just been converted into a kids movie theatre. So we'd go and watch the Aristocats and Disney movies and things like that together. And then I would stay with him at weekends, and in the mornings he would invariably be hungover and want to sleep in. And he only had a handful of movies, and one of them was High Society, that Grace Kelly musical. So I would sit and watch Grace Kelly. I would watch High Society on a loop. I knew that movie like word for word, aged like 8 or 9, like too young to be watching High Society, but like nose pressed to the screen, just trying to become Grace Kelly. Like I couldn't get enough of this woman. So my influences were mixed in terms of, it wasn't like.
So you were interested in musicals as well then?
Yeah, but I can't sing a note, so
me either. It's okay.
Nobody was in danger of me getting into musical theatre. But I had the same tastes as I love Disney movies, and then, like I say, I had this strange fascination with Grace Kelly that started at quite a young age. So that was my, you don't know what you know until later. I didn't know I was growing up in a cultural epicenter. I was just growing up in London, and
you were living your life. And talk to me, because I've spoken to a lot of actors that grew up in the UK. Rufus Sewell's a friend, Jason Isaacs, and I'm curious, because there's so many amazing youth theater groups and things like that just don't really exist in America the way they do there. Did you at a certain point have that imperative to talk to your parents of like, hey, I want to pursue this?
I did. I joined the like I say, I went to a very it froze up. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My Wi-Fi. Sorry. Okay, great. I went to boarding school, and I didn't love my boarding school. It was very academic, and I was desperately homesick a lot of the time. But I had this wonderful acting teacher, and I had these drama lessons once a week with her, and they were a place where I felt very seen and very loved. And so she encouraged me a lot. I had the academics down. Like I was lucky. I didn't particularly struggle academically. So, but the acting felt like a soft place, like where somebody actually was interested in how I was feeling rather than how my exams were going. So she encouraged me, and I did the National Youth Theatre. I got into that.
You got in the National Youth Theatre. You can't just skate over that. That's such a huge accomplishment.
I guess it is, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a cool thing. So I got into the National Youth Theatre, but I felt like a fish out of water. I felt so exposed, and
if you don't mind, how old were you at this time? So
I think I must have been 14 or 15.
Oh, so you're really still coming into your own as a
yeah. And I felt very acutely aware of my privilege, and that I came from a posh boarding school, and most of the kids there didn't, and I felt like I spoke differently. I felt incredibly self-conscious, and I didn't have the equipment to brazen it out or defy, but I also knew enough to be like, well, I can't pretend I go to the local comprehensive, because I don't. So I didn't really participate. I found I did it, but I found it excruciating, to be honest. And then I went to Oxford, and I majored in English literature there.
Was academia always, did that come from your parents, or were you just naturally a good student?
I think it's, like I say, I learned to read very young. This is the benefit of having a nursery school teacher for your
Which will come into hand when we talk about your podcast, because you got a killer podcast.
Thank you.
Better than me.
No. Yeah. Just, it's very, very niche, my podcast. But anyway.
So is mine.
True. I think niche is good.
Yeah.
anyway, so I learned to read, and so I read voraciously, and I loved reading, and so um, going to Oxford I mean, yes, there was a lot of exams and all of that to sit through, but it didn't feel impossible because really what it meant was just doing a ton of reading and writing
So
essays. But
literature
that
was your
part felt
major,
very,
right?
um, yes, exactly. And
That's
then I
incredible.
did plays on the side. There was a little group of us who really wanted to do this professionally.
Yeah.
We all knew that we wanted to become either producers or directors or actors. So we made our own theatre group company, and we
Wow.
put on a play every term while we were there. And it was great because we got to cast it amongst ourselves. And I'd be like, yeah, sure, I want to be the lead. I want to be Arkadina, or I want to do the cherry orchard. I want to do, I just got to pick my role. It was
Wow.
amazing. It's never been that. It's been downhill ever since. So
So who
it
was
was
curating the catalog of work?
between ourselves, we would usually do it. But often it was the director who went on to direct a ton of plays and
Yeah.
did had great success at Edinburgh and is now a novelist. But he was usually who would pick the plays, and then he'd cast us, and then we just did a play. So Oxford were these 3 very happy years where I got to read everything I wanted. I had a lovely boyfriend, and I just did a play every 6 weeks. So
Is that where you
again,
feel like you Sonia found your voice as an artist, or started to at least?
I think I did, and I think I started to feel comfortable saying out loud, this is what I think I want to do. I think there was some disappointment, or if not disappointment, then consternation in my family. I think they were a bit like, okay. I think they thought it was a bit like modeling. I think they thought it
Yeah.
was like,
Oh, this is cute. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you'll get over that, and then
Yeah.
you'll become the journalist or the lawyer that you were meant to be. And I kept being like, no, I think this is what I want to do. Anyway, so I, I had a I had the great fortune of doing this play. I did Look Back in Anger while I was at
Oh,
Oxford in our
wow.
last year, and a bunch of agents came up to see the play in back in those days, and maybe it still happens now. Agents would actually bother coming to Oxford and Cambridge to watch plays to see if they could cherry pick, the next Kate Winslet.
Even though they weren't like a Guildhall or a
Exactly.
Rada, they still came to
They
those.
came to Oxford and
Wow.
Cambridge, and they may
Well,
do
it's obviously
still.
the Harvard, one of the greatest schools in the world, if not the greatest.
It was yeah.
I'm
So
so
anyway,
jealous of your experience. I love it. That's
it
incredible.
was it was amazing. But all of this is to lead me to the point that it was. So I was lucky enough to get to choose. I had a few offers to represent me, and so I got to pick which agent I wanted. And then I was like, now leave me alone because I want to get my degree, so I don't want to work yet. And he
How,
was
oh, so how
stunned.
how far along were you when you got repped?
I still had another 6 months to go, and he
Okay, so it
was
was in
ready
your
to.
final year.
It was in my final year exactly, and I wanted to sit my exams and do it right. Um, so I told him to pipe down and wait for me, which I think he was stunned at. And then it had all been, I'm not going to say easy, but everything that I had wanted to get or to do, and I had set my sights on, and I had worked incredibly hard, and I had made it happen. There had been a correlation between
Yeah.
effort and result. And then I left Oxford and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do a movie. And that is not how it works, or not how it worked for
Yeah.
me.
Unless your dad's
And
Clint Eastwood,
suddenly,
usually not.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was just met with this free fall, this like, I mean, talk about despair. Mine kicked in the day I left Oxford. I was
Yeah,
like, but nobody told me.
yeah,
Nobody, all these people for all these years have prepared me for college, and nobody prepared me for leaving. Nobody prepared me for the fact that effort and result are no longer necessarily, at least in this career, linked, and that you can be excellent in an audition. You can dazzle them. You can make them weep in the audition and still not book the job. And
yeah.
and that took 2 years for me to really begin to wrap my head around. I took it so personally, and because I didn't have family in the business, because I hadn't been to drama school and witnessed people struggling and showcases and the talk of agents and all of that. I had bypassed all of that, and mine had, up until that point, arrived with, as I say, sort of some relative ease. So it was startling. I mean, it was genuinely despairing free fall for a while. And I worked. I mean, I did repertory theatre and I did plays here and there, and I did a little bit part on the BBC, and I started to sort of get known, but I didn't like break out with a role in the way that I had
Yeah.
truly expected I was going to. It
Yeah.
was astonishing to me. It
No,
really was.
I think it's a real disservice. You know, I went to NYU, some of these institutions do, particularly with what they
Uh-huh.
charge and how they prepare
No.
yourself, because the whole time they tell you how lucky you are to be there, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't tell you is how to survive and adjust to
Right.
leaving the gate. And
Right.
so talk to me, even though you did have the agent and you did have the rep
Mm-hmm.
and you had a home base in London, how did you buoy yourself through this despair and this
I
madness?
I think I did what I've always done since, which is I quickly went, oh, this can't be the only thing I do. If my, not just financially can it not be the only thing I do, that was very clear, but if my entire emotional well being is caught up in this one thing, it's like falling in love with one guy and only that guy can call.
Yeah.
It's just disastrous. And I quickly realized that, I was going to need to drink from other wells in order
Yeah.
to feel fed. And as I say, books have always been my thing. So that was, I felt like I'm only equipped to like read a book and tell you what I think of it. My career, my degree has qualified me for nothing else. So I got a job at the Royal Court Theatre in London,
Wow.
and I read plays for them. So they get, I mean, back in those days, they were getting,
Plays that they were interested in workshopping or developing.
yes, but they were
Yeah.
just getting unsolicited submissions,
Got it.
thousands of them a
And
year.
and they do read them like agents do.
A
Yeah.
100%. So
Yeah.
they would pay people like me to read the plays and then write reports as to whether or not they should be done or not. And so I read plays for the Royal Court. And then to make money, unlike most of my friends who waitressed, my mum ran a nursery school. So I would go and work in the nursery school. So I've never waited a table, but I have taught many children to read. That's
Wow.
that's the trade-off
I
that
think
I've
both are
made.
just as equally as hard, if not, teaching children is a patience that,
Yes.
waiting tables is not required totally. So I
Yes.
respect that so much. And I'm curious, because, you know, talk to me about your relationship to America, because it's different for everyone. Because I know in the UK, they tend to mythologize the aristocracy and they do these great period costume dramas. And,
Mm-hmm.
only now within the last, 10 years, shows like Peaky Blinders and
Mm-hmm.
other shows are really starting to deviate from that. And I love it. Whereas in America, we mythologize our working class. Was there
Mm-hmm.
ever, obviously you talk about Grace Kelly and Hollywood, was there
Mm-hmm.
ever this idea of like, I could always go to America, or was that not really on
No,
your?
it didn't feel that way. It felt like I was just going to be a working London actor. Hollywood felt like something other people did.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't brave enough just to go and try it out without being invited, as it were. Like
Yeah.
it felt um, far too strange and foreign. And I didn't know anybody in America. I mean, I didn't know a single person in LA. Um, so I remember one of the first sort of bigger jobs that I got was it was for Hallmark and it was Noah's Ark.
Oh,
And
wow.
John Voight played Noah. And me and Emily Mortimer and Sydney Poitier, who is Sydney Poitier's daughter,
Wow.
Sid, played the three daughters of Noah. And it is a really horrendous piece of work, but
That's we all start somewhere.
oh my
You
God.
should see my
But
first movie. It makes no sense.
it it was shocking,
Yeah.
but it was an amazing job because we all went. That was the three daughters, and then Alexis Denisof, Jonathan Cake, and Mark Baisley, all of whom are fabulous working actors, all played the three sons. So we were known as the Six Pack. All six of us got on so well, and we all went to Australia, and we lived in Australia for 4 months shooting Noah's Ark with
Wow.
John
Hallmark
Voight.
shot in Australia. I would not have
Oh my
guessed
God.
that.
Yes. And they paid us a fortune and we had per diems that we didn't even know what to do with. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. But before we went to Australia, they flew us all to LA to rehearse. This was back in the days when there was money.
I was gonna say you never get that.
No,
Wow.
no, no. That's what I mean. Like, this was my
Yeah.
first big job where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I could live off this for like a year. I could live off
Yeah.
this. Okay, this is great.
Yeah.
So we all arrived in LA, and I remember Sydney obviously lived here already, but Emily and I were put up in the same hotel, and then we were driven into work every day. And Em went off one morning to go and do meetings. And I remember it because I thought it had a capital M. Like, it just sounded so important. I'm going to do meetings. And she went off, and she looked like Audrey Hepburn. She came downstairs. She had huge black sunglasses on and this beautiful little black sundress and her short little black crop. And I remember just sort of lying by the pool, feeling pale and blobby in a swimsuit, holding a sort of overpriced cocktail, watching Emily go off to do her meetings, thinking, oh, I'll never do those. I mean, I wonder who she's going to meet. Like, I wonder it felt so mysterious and so other and so something that I would never be a part of. Anyway, cut to a few years later, I do a pilot. I audition for a pilot for HBO called Mind of the Married Man. And amazingly, I get the job, or I don't. They fly me back out for the screen test, and they put me up in the same hotel that I'd stayed in 3 years earlier with Em.
Can you say what hotel it is? Is it still?
Yes, yeah. It's in Century City. Is it the Hyatt?
Oh, the one that's under the one that's under construction.
It probably is. I think so. It's
across from CAA.
It's yes.
I know that one well. Yeah,
that one. And it's on
Avenue of the Stars. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm on Avenue of the Stars. This is the best sign in the world.
Yeah.
But it was just so fun, this like difference of being back in the same hotel, and this time I am here for meetings, and I auditioned for this pilot, and I got the pilot. So then I came out here and shot Mind of the Married Man, and then it ran for 2 years. So that was what brought me to America. That was how I got here. It was because I came with a show.
And then obviously I imagine that got you American representation.
That got me that got me my fantastic agents who I've been with ever since. I'm quite loyal, so you have to fuck up quite badly for me to love you.
Beautiful.
So I love my gang, and I've been with them since day one. So so that was how I got here. And as I say, it was so surprising to me. I was not the actor who I thought would move to LA. But
and this is just so I'm getting a time.
This is 21 years ago. And I've never gone
so like
back.
2000, right
Yes,
around there. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I officially moved here on the day before September 11th. I moved here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day?
Very, very vividly. I was staying with a girlfriend because I hadn't found a place to live yet, and I was supposed to start. We'd finished the show. We'd finished shooting the show, and we were supposed to start doing press for the show. And at that point, HBO had wanted to fly me to New York to do my half of the press. And at the last minute, so I'd been sitting in London waiting to find out whether I was taking a plane to LA or a plane to JFK. And at the last minute, they said, actually, just come to LA. You can do all the press in LA. And so I landed on the 10th. Yeah. And there was an earthquake as I landed. The earth moved literally as I walked across the tarmac. And I was like, I'm going to take this as a good sign. But this is quite scary. And then the next day, I'm staying at my friend's house. As I say, I haven't even figured out where I'm going to live yet. And my mum calls very, very early in the morning, and I'm mortified that she hasn't understood there's an 8-hour time difference, and you can't be ringing people's houses. It's not my house. And so I blearily answer the phone being like, Mum, just go away. You can't ring this early. And Mum's hysterical and screams, get under the bed. There's planes headed to
She
LA.
had the news before you did.
Get under the bed. And at that point, there were still planes headed to LA, and they didn't know what was happening. So she's freaking out. Yeah. I don't know what she's talking about. I get her off the phone because Mum can be hysterical sometimes. So, and then I go downstairs and I make a cup of tea, And I'll never forget, I was standing there and it was one of those kettles that sits on the stovetop and it whistles when it's ready. And
Yeah.
this whistle, I'm standing there just bleary, and I'm also jet lagged to hell because I've only just arrived. And this whistle happens, and it's as though it like snaps me out of my reverie or something. And I go and turn on the news, and that's when and as I turn on the news, I watch the first tower come down. It was a
Wow.
it was a crazy way to arrive. It was a
Yeah.
crazy way to arrive in the country that you think you just moved to. It
And
was
and you're still in production on the Mind of a Merry Man at this point, or
no, we've wrapped production, but we've
okay.
already been picked up for season 2, so I'm already there waiting to sort of start work on that.
So that's cool. So you're here and you got a job, and
Yes,
I believe that went for 20 episodes, right?
yes, yeah,
So then talk to me about, you're in LA, then you go back to the marketplace and
yes,
you're auditioning, and
yeah.
at this point you have some series regular credits and you got a movie. What was your were you going out for more like guest star series
No,
reoccurring kind of things, or what
I
was?
was they were gunning quite hard for me, my agents. So then after that, I think the next thing I did was Coupling, which was
Yeah.
at the time sort of the hot ticket. They'd already made the pilot once, then they decided to recast it. It was NBC's answer to Friends.
So this is
Uh,
just so for the actors listening, because I don't think a lot of, I'm 31, so I guess I'm a millennial, but the people below us, the TikTok
yeah.
generation, really in from about 2000 to really, I would say 2011, it was premium content like HBO. Really,
Hmm.
Showtime got in later, but then it was ABC, CBS, NBC. It was the major networks that dominated it, and I don't
Yes.
think most people really
Yes.
understand that
Sure.
because now it's just like, Apple's got content, Facebook, everyone has a
Exactly.
content company. So
Yeah.
so back then, some of the network shows were quite good. So talk to me about that experience.
Well, Coupling was based on an English show that had been incredibly successful. And I knew about Coupling, but it had already come out after I'd left England. So I
Mm,
wasn't devoted to it. I knew it by name, but I'd been sort of out of the loop for a couple of years doing Mind of the Married Man and living in LA. Uh, anyway, they asked me to come and take over this role, and I made the mistake of not watching the English show, and I should have done. I learned my lesson. I've never done
oh,
it
really?
again.
Talk to me why you think it, because
Um,
usually they say don't watch it, so you don't,
yes,
yeah.
and
So
they didn't want us to watch it. But the the researcher in me knows better, and would
mm,
certainly know better now. Um, the same quality that allows me to pick a good book or allowed me to tell the royal court whether to do this play or not, I think would have told me not to even attempt to try and make this show for an American audience.
wow.
Coupling was set in a pub, and it was about a very promiscuous, uh, for an American taste at that time, 20 years ago, a promiscuous group of 20-year-olds. Promiscuous didn't even begin to, you wouldn't have even used that adjective to describe them in England. That's just how 20 something year olds behaved. They
Yeah.
sleep around, sleep with each other, one night stands. It's a very different world. It's a different attitude and relationship to alcohol.
Yeah.
It's a different, sloppier attitude to sex. And I had been here long enough in the 2.5 years I'd been there to know that the American attitude is more puritanical. That a show set that if it wanted to be friends with booze is how it was pitched, kind
Yeah.
of thing. That wasn't going to fly here, not on an
Yeah.
NBC network. If
No.
HBO had done it, that would have been different. But it
Yeah.
was
Standards and practices and all.
totally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, this. The minute I so the show happened and it was cancelled within I forget how many episodes we did. I
Yeah.
don't even know if we did 12. And it was so unsurprising to me when I actually bothered to go back and check the source material. I was like, why did I not? And who thought
Yeah.
this was ever going to work? In
Yeah.
what world was this going to work? Um, but it was tough because even with the intellectually understanding it, it's always gutting to be on a show that's cancelled. It's the only
Yeah.
time I think it's the only time it's happened to me that a show's been pulled off the air. I don't think I've had that before or since. And it just felt bewildering, and it felt like failure, and it felt like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Is this when I go back to England? Um,
Did you have a yearning missing theater and doing those kind of things that
I
just,
deeply missed theatre, and
yeah,
I missed, again here, so much has changed in 20 years, but for me growing up in England, and I think the same is true now, there's enormous fluidity between the disciplines. So you aren't just, I don't know anyone who's just a theatre actor. Every actor I know
yeah,
makes a living doing radio plays, movies, TV, plays, play readings, workshops, you name it. I feel like New York actors have that kind of elasticity, but in LA, I realized like, oh, there's no theatre here, or what theatre there is so poorly regarded because
yeah,
any actor who does it has got one eye on their phone in case an audition comes in. So you
right.
can't,
It's so sad. It's such a
yeah,
bummer, you know. I mean, they have, the Geffen and other things that are slowly, but
right,
really you got to go down to San Diego if you want to get anything.
totally,
Yeah. So
totally.
what when the show ends and you go back again, was there ever a moment of like, what am I doing in America? Should I go back? Or were you
Yeah, I
pretty,
did. I had plenty of I had plenty of times where I was like, oh, I should go back to England. But practicalities kept me here, apart from anything else. All the work that I had done had only aired here. Again, this
ah,
was back, the internet wasn't the sort of flourishing
self
superhighway
tapes,
that it is now,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And also, these days, For All Mankind, the Apple show that I'm on now, it airs simultaneously. My mum watches it in England at the same time that I watch it here in LA. Whereas then I'd done 2 seasons of an HBO show and an ill fated NBC show, none of which had aired in England. So, as far as the English casting directors were concerned, I'd just disappeared for 3 years.
Yeah,
So, it felt like going back there was going to be hard. I'd
yeah,
felt like I have much more profile here than I
yeah.
do back at home, so I should keep going. So, but it was lonely and difficult and bewildering. And LA is, as I'm sure many of your guests have said, it's easy in a way. It's easy to get invited to the openings and the parties and the
Yeah.
premieres. It's hard to make the friends. That's
It's full of snakes and flakes, and I spent,
yeah.
I only share this because I'm coming up on 5 years sober, and
Uh-huh.
I used to go to LA because I used to think it would help me get sober because there's mountains and palm trees, and then,
Sure.
but there, I feel like no matter, I don't know how you feel, but like I feel like no matter how well you're doing or not doing there, you're constantly reminded
Yeah.
it's just one business that dominates the city, and
Yeah.
it's so unhealthy for me at least, for
Yeah.
someone who's starting off. And
Yeah.
so talk to me. Was it, the people and socially that you were meeting, was it people that you had worked with on sets and crew and cast, or
I,
did you
I
did
got
you find a core group of friends, where you or did that?
I did. I got extremely lucky in that Mind of the Married Man, my first job, had two very important people in it for me. Kate Walsh was one of my
Love Kate.
earliest friends, and Kate was so unbelievably generous to me. Kate was just like, "Hi, you're new. You need friends. Meet my friends. You need a dentist. Here's my dentist. He's still my
Wow.
dentist. You need a doctor. Here's my doctor." She just over and over would scoop me up and shared her people with me. And then, good people attract good people. So I had, I'm not going to say quickly, but steadily assembled a core group of people that I'm so proud of. I'm so grateful for the friends that I have here in LA. I really am. And yes, some of them are from the business, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are musicians and teachers and different things.
So I know you did, CSI. You did about like 10 episodes on that. Did that film in New York?
No, that was CS. It was CSI New York, but we shot it here.
And they just do the pickup exteriors. Yeah, it's
Exactly. Yeah,
Hollywood. Love it.
yeah.
But but talk to me. By the time you got to Sleeper Cell, did you really start to feel like LA was a new home for you?
Yes, I did. I mean, I definitely felt like it was home, and it felt like this is where I wanted to be, and this weather was so beautiful, and moving. it felt like it was an easy place for me to get to visit both parents. My father
Yeah.
lived in Argentina, my mum in London. So this way, I felt like I was in a good triangle and able to sort of see everyone comfortably. Um, I was getting the interesting work, and I was starting to realize that I really only wanted to do the interesting work, and that I would
And you had the
rather.
credits to be choosy in the best
Uh,
sense possible. Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it meant I went hungry and I borrowed money from
Yeah.
parents and friends, and um, I have paid, as it were, for how picky I am, no question. And it's a constant debate. Even today, I'm like, I don't I have to really, really want to do it. And these days I get to blame it on my kids. I get to say,
I got a
I
play date
can't,
for a
I
month.
can't leave them. Yeah, exactly. Or
Yeah.
they won't survive without me. The truth is the kids would be fine without
Yeah.
me. But back then I couldn't blame it on anything. It was just me. I'm an enormous snob about what I'll do.
Yeah.
And I really only want to do things that I would want to watch. And that puts the bar quite high.
Well, that's so. I mean, you're an incredible actress, and you deserve nothing but the best. So, talk to me. What while you're doing this, you get another show that I think is incredible, but didn't last. The Sarah Connor Chronicles. I mean,
Oh yeah.
how was that experience? Was that
That was
fun?
great. That was
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah, and that felt again. It was a sort of genre I didn't know and didn't know much about.
Yeah.
It began as a guest star, and it spun into a bigger thing. Um, that's been a sort of history, a pattern for me. And then, of course, it brings me to Lost. Of and Molly Cobb is another example of this. This is always the advice I sort of give to actors: is there really is no such thing as a guest star. If you show up and make yourself indispensable and are easy to work with and
Mhm.
bring your full talent to bear, and you treat that role as though it were a series regular, as though you were one of those big trailers that you were walking in and out of, I guarantee you people notice.
Yeah.
People notice, and they write for it, and they want more of it. They want more of that energy around. They want more of that creativity on
Yeah.
set. They want more of somebody who's respectful and shows up on time and knows their lines, and who then brings a little extra to the role. That's not a guest star. That's what then becomes someone that people then want around. That's how you become a recurring, and that's how you then become a series regular. So I I am the walking, living, embodied proof that there is no such thing as a guest star, that you can make it whatever you choose to make it. Sarah Connor Chronicles is the first example of that. Lost is the next example of that. Penny was supposed to be, an interesting sidebar, and Penny, is considered one of the most sort of what is one of the most beloved characters on that
Yeah.
show.
And what was it like, working with JJ, Damien, I mean, like, was that?
You didn't It didn't work with them. The writers were in the writers' room in LA. The
Oh, okay. I
actors,
didn't know if they were hands-on,
no, not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Jack Bender was the director who directed most of the episodes of Lost. He directed, I think, every one that I was in. Everyone was on the island, so I just flew out to Hawaii and did
And
that, and I
what
did
is
it.
that like getting to film there, like
Oh,
the
it was, well, for most of the time, I would fly out to Hawaii and put on a polo neck and be in a studio and pretend it was London in 1997. So I would often fly to Hawaii and never ever use an outdoor set because Penny was
wow.
not on the island. Penny
Yeah.
was one of the people stuck in a space-time continuum,
Yeah.
as you are. So Penny was
Yeah,
not
exactly.
that until Penny rescues people, and then that was when I got to go on a boat and go and be out, off the coast of Oahu, and rescue the cast in my boat. So it was amazing. It was a beautiful sort of punctuation to get to go and be in Lost, to get to go and be in Hawaii, and
Yeah.
I was sorry, it's frozen again. Are you still seeing me? Oh yeah,
I'm
good.
see yeah.
Uh, and I was great. I was doing often. I mean, because I flew in and out for years. I was usually doing other shows at the same time. So I was doing Tell Me You Love Me, which was a
In
wonderful.
treatment as well, another HBO.
I did In
Yeah.
Treatment, and I did Tell Me You Love Me. Tell Me You Love Me, I was a series regular on, so we did 10 episodes of that, and then I flew to Hawaii a couple of times in between. Then I did a play on Broadway. I did Frost Nixon, and I had to, between a matinee and an evening show, I had to go to a studio at the bottom base of Manhattan somewhere and shoot a quick Lost scene,
No
and then
way.
literally turn around and run back and do the evening show. That was a crazy day.
How was your experience doing Frost Nixon? We can't glance over that. I mean, obviously it became the sensation it was as a film, but the play, what was that experience like doing eight
It was
shows a week?
amazing and it was awful all at the same time.
Wow.
I didn't I'd never done Broadway. I'd never done that before. My experience of theatre was England and smaller and more experimental. I was used to. I'm used to an audience you can almost see and you can
Yeah.
smell them and you can hear them. Broadway, they're so far away and you're mic'd. Although our director did not want us mic'd, so we used our own voices. But it feels very odd. It's both live and very remote. Um, I didn't love 8 shows a week, but I think that may have been because I didn't have enough to do. There's only one woman in the show, and
Mm,
it's Frost's girlfriend. Um, Again, the clue is in the title. It's not a woman's play.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
about that. And I just finished doing "Tell Me You Love Me," which where I had so much to do, and it was eviscerating and hard and a beautiful poem of a role. So to go from that to this felt like I was just like, what am I? I've got nothing to do. Like,
Yeah,
what
it
am I
was a
going to
step
do?
backward. Yeah, I can understand.
If just creatively, or
Yeah.
I am aware of privilege of being able to say that, but
No, I understand.
I felt I felt a bit starved creatively doing it.
Were you able to enjoy New York at all, at
Yeah,
least? Or
I
okay.
love New York. I
Yeah.
loved it, and I love being there, and I love being able to feel like, okay, I did this. I mean, it had long been on my to-do list. Had been to spend some time in New York, to
Yeah.
work in New York, to do a play there, and I will, if anyone would have me, I
I
would
was gonna
do
say, would you do another, and I'll
I
cast you as the lead and we'll do it
definitely,
together?
I definitely would. I would
Yeah.
do a play again and again. Now that the kids are a bit older, it's hard. You miss every bedtime when you do a
Yeah.
play. You're gone all day when you're rehearsing, and then you're gone all night when the play's up. So
Yeah.
it's a quite a thing to step into, and quite a thing for a family to take on. The impact on the family is very real.
Yeah. Well, obviously you did other things like Elementary and Power, and we could talk project to project, but I do want to get to For All
Yeah,
Mankind.
yeah,
So talk to me, because we're skipping ahead a few years now.
yeah.
We live in a time where anyone who owns tech or has kind of access to VC is doing content, and
Mm.
you're obviously studied literature, and we talked about being selective about writing. Talk to me about, how did this piece come your way? Did you know about the show, or talk to me about how it all came together for you?
No, I didn't know about anything. I knew that Apple was making content. That was all I knew. And then I got asked to go in and audition for uh, this role. I had a character description saying that she looked rough around the edges, um, and was sullen and didn't like men. I mean, I thought something like that. And then my agents privately said to me, dress down for this. Like, really
Ooh.
do not. This is not a beauty role. This is not.
Yeah.
So I did. I literally rolled out of bed and buttoned up a shirt to the top, and that was all I had, was 3 sides. I mean, I had
Yeah.
no idea. And I read the scene, and I loved the woman. I loved the energy of her, and I got the role. And then I started work almost immediately, and
Did they have all the
they
scripts
rolled right.
beforehand?
No, they didn't at all. I
Wow.
joined them in episode 3, and they were still shooting episodes 1 and 2. We block shoot, so they were just starting the first block. So the cast had really only just met each other because nobody
Yeah.
did a pilot. They just rolled straight into the show. They'd already done the table read without me, so nobody really knew what I was going to bring to the table.
Wow.
There was a lot of like, okay, I hope she's good because Molly's a big part of
Yeah.
episode 3. Um, but I was supposed to die. Molly was supposed to die after a few episodes.
In the crash
So
that ultimately, spoiler alert, kills the other character, or
yes, I think that
yeah,
was probably where Molly was supposed to go.
why
I don't
you
know.
I'm
I've
so
never
sorry, I
pushed
didn't
the
mean to.
writers on this.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
There's another thing that's a recurring theme on this podcast, the separation between good acting and great acting. And good acting are people that, can make a living playing their personalities, and sure, that's fine. And great actors are people that make choices and bring nuances to the role that no other actor or actress could play that role. And what you did with Molly, nobody else could have done what you've done with that role. And it's electric, and she comes in like, this electric force, and it's so beautiful. Talk to me. Did the choices that you make, and the specificity, did you work with someone on that, or did it all come to you through the writing? What was your process for discovering Molly?
Thank you. I'm always interested in if character presents one way, then, and if it's so overdeveloped as Molly's ferocity and her determination is, and her stubbornness, I'm always curious in what's that hiding. So what's beneath that. So I I think my theory, as much as I had one, was that there was a child in Molly that just wanted to go to the moon.
Yeah.
That if you just scratched beneath the surface, there was a little girl who had spent her whole life looking out the window, wanting to go to the moon,
Yeah.
and that this had hardened and calcified into this gruff exterior. This I don't need anyone, f you all, I don't need men. I'm better than all of you. But that just beneath the surface is um, this little creature that just wants what she wants.
Yeah.
And um, I think when I found that and then built on top of it, then it became about looking for opportunities to just show a glimmer of that. Where in this scene or in this episode does Molly feel safe and private enough for us to see that
Yeah.
child in her. Anyway, so that was my sort of, and then I did a ton of research on
I was going to say, what I'm
important
going
stuff.
to throw a big word out. Verisimilitude. Did you work with NASA and physicists to
Mhm.
really understand the vernacular and the language? And I
Yeah.
mean, you sell it. Your performance is incredible. I feel like you're a real astronaut, and you're in space. So I mean, talk to me about
Uh,
understanding the
I
physics of all
I would
this.
be I want to be clear. I would be a fucking terrible astronaut. I mean, appalling astronaut. I have in life zero care for detail. I hate instructions. If anything comes with instructions, I tear them up. I don't want. If it's not self-explanatory, it's annoying to me. I'm irritated with minutia. All of these things, all the things that you absolutely have to be an astronaut,
Yeah.
would make me an appalling astronaut. But Garrett Reisman is an astronaut who is a consultant on the show. He's in fact the first guest I have on my. I do a podcast called Bookish,
Bookish.
where
Yeah.
I interview interesting people about the 5 books that have shaped them most, not their favorites, but the ones that have been most formative to them. And I've already done a couple of seasons, and I'm just halfway through season 3. And Garrett Reisman is my first guest on the show, and he talks about one of the books that he took to space and why he took it with him, and why he needed some light reading matter on the International Space Station. So it's a side note, but he's wonderful and creative and funny and enormously collaborative. And so Garrett is on hand, often on set, but
Got it.
definitely in the writers' room at all times, so that the writers can write what their wild imaginings are, and then Garrett comes in and is like, "Yeah, but oxygen doesn't work like that, and the space station, the gravity's not going to let that happen." And
Yeah.
so he clambers on with the truthfulness of it. And then we have the Okudas, who are also NASA absolute experts, and they literally climb into the rockets and the spaceships and things with us and make sure we know what every single button is and what it would do and all of that. So, but each one of us varies in our meticulousness.
Yeah.
There are some of us who just go in and are like just authoritatively click things and don't care. I'm when it comes to my work, enough of I like knowing. I like research, so I usually go off and like research gravity and
It it
stuff like that.
it shows, and thank you. And as an actor, what is it like getting to film this, where no pennies is spared, and you're, doing these incredible sequences on these amazing sets. I mean, was it going back to your childhood and being glued to the Grace Kelly? Did you have that moment of like, here I am and I'm doing it, I mean, it must have.
I did. I had an amazing experience where one night, the spacesuit is a bitch. The spacesuit is just so
Yeah,
hard. It really is. It's grueling being in that thing. It's really heavy, particularly season one spacesuits where they hadn't quite figured out how to help us out with it yet.
yeah,
Um, and it's an exact replica of what was being worn on 1971 on the moon.
wow,
So, um, but the moon is 1/6 of the world's gravity. So that's a lot. Like it weighs a lot less on the moon than it does on a Sony
yeah.
rod. So, but there was one night where in season one, I'm lowered into a crater, and they want me to get out, and I
The
insist on
mining
going
sequence.
deeper in order to
Yeah,
find water. And so I find ice on the moon. I become the first person to discover water on the moon. And so I'm high, high up. They built a 60-foot styrofoam crater and spray painted it grey. And I'm alone on set, and I've been the only person working all day, and it's late at night, and I'm strapped in a harness, and I'm dangling in front of this crater, and there's a
yeah,
giant crane with creating moonlight, and there's probably, I don't know, 120 people at my feet, all collaborating to get this shot. And I just had this moment of being like, oh my God, look at what I get to do. I
yeah.
mean, most people are like, I don't know, sitting in traffic with a briefcase beside them, or pored over their iPhone, or hunched over a laptop. Look at what I get to do for a living. It was genuinely humbling. It still is.
And it's amazing, and thank you for your service, literally. I mean, it's inspired me, and the best actors steal, and I'm stealing from you. You're so incredible. And talk to me. You got season two. Were you guys able to shoot that before the pandemic, or did that? Talk to me about that experience. Was that at all hurt, or was that already done before the pandemic started?
Sorry, it cut out. Did you ask me if we were done before the pandemic started?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, sorry. So I know
Yeah.
season two, was
We
that
no.
affected by the pandemic at all?
Yes. So we were about to. We had just started shooting episodes 9 and 10, and as I say, we block shoot. So we were shooting those together, and we had I think we had like 14 days left to shoot in order to be done with the whole show. So we were really nearly there, and we got shut down.
Wow.
And so that was in February or March. I guess I'm terrible with dates.
Yeah.
And then we waited and waited, and then we went back in August, and we finished up the show, and we got it done, which was great. And then Apple picked us up almost immediately, and so we went back to work in January of this year on season three. So we're
Are you
shooting
are you
that
still
right
filming
now.
now?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
We'll be filming until the fall. I think we won't be done until September or something.
Oh, I'm gonna have to have you come back when it comes out. It's gonna be incredible. But I do want to talk about, thank you for Molly, and you're so amazing in that show. And I just have so much gratitude for your work. And I really do want to talk about your podcast,
Oh,
going back
thank you.
to literature and books. Where did the idea for this come from,
I have, as I say, like have my whole life been this voracious reader, and I love and miss talking about books. That was one of the things that I really loved at Oxford, was just the freedom
Yeah.
and to do that, and not hopefully in any sort of pretentious way, just in that exchange of like, I just read something and it's so great, and this is what made it great, and I miss that. And I am the person that people email to ask what to read next. Like I constantly have a list of books to recommend, and I'm always sending friends books if I think that they're going to love them, or recommendations all the time. And during the pandemic, I read so much. I think lots of people devoured TV and movies. I I just read and read and read. And I came out of the pandemic feeling like I want someone to, I want to talk books to people again. I miss it. So I went back and now I'm doing season 3 of the podcast, and I just love doing it. I have such interesting guests. It's such a
Yeah,
fun way to meet people. I'm sure you feel the same way.
totally.
Mine is not I try and make mine as diverse as possible. So I interview actors, architects, writers, physicists, astronauts, the head of TED I have coming on next week. It's a really wide range of people, and the only thing they have in common is hopefully is a love of books and a
Yeah.
willingness to talk about how those books have changed them. So if if you're someone who likes books, um, and who someone likes hearing about people's lives, I think it's, as I say, it's niche, but it's a really simple podcast and a simple way of talking to people about how books have what books have meant to them and how they've changed them in some way.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, obviously, I have to ask you, what are the 5 books that most shaped you?
Well, I had my producer interview me when I did, I
I
think at
saw
the
that on there.
end of
Yeah, yeah,
season
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had him do it so that I could have an experience of what it was to be in my guest's shoes. One of them is Where the Wild Things Are,
Oh,
that
yeah, of
lovely big
course.
book. One of them is Revolutionary Road, book by Richard
Okay.
Yates,
Yeah.
which was seminal for me. One of them is Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, which is a book, one of the few books I read and reread,
Oh, those are the
not every
best.
year, but probably every other year.
Yeah.
Um, and one is a collection of short stories called Last Night by James Salter,
Oh, great. I
which
love the
is,
shorts. I'm
yeah.
in Richmond right now, where Edgar Allan Poe is from. So
Oh, wow.
another great show. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, anyway, it's always fun at dinner parties too to just go around and see what people's
I'm
five
I
books
I I think
might
I'm gonna
be.
be messaging you all the time on DMs, like what should I be reading? And I mean
Do
that's
it,
yeah.
please do. I
Are
love it.
are you
I often I throw things up on Instagram too. I like, if there's something that I've really loved, I'll usually photograph it and try and put it out there and stuff.
I don't want to get too existential here, but do you think that, obviously we're kind of in a weird time where, movies are predominantly dominated by intellectual property and comic book, and do you think
Mm.
now TV is the home for great writing? Do you think there's
I do. I see it that
yeah,
way, and I
yeah,
see that it's been that move for a long time. I think I feel like it's very, very hard. Rare is the great movie these days that
yeah,
is small and interesting. Nomadland felt like a
yeah,
beautiful and notable exception, but there were not too many that I can think of in recent times that uh, have harnessed what a movie can do and put it there.
yeah,
I just think there's just there's so much out there. It's a kind of thrilling time to be an actor. I think it's an even more thrilling time to be a consumer and have
yeah,
this much choice of where to go. I'm really interested. My curiosity is what new plays will be coming out, because I'm
yeah,
really interested in. I feel like theatre uh, is the best place to reflect what it was to live through the pandemic. That actually the claustrophobia of a single set, um, like if I were to set my mind to it, I would want to write a play about the pandemic, not a movie, and not a TV show. But um, it feels like it would best reflect what we've just all lived through.
any hopes of getting a piece from you one day of writing?
No, you won't get a play out. You won't get a play out of me, but I am writing a book. I am
Amazing.
writing a book, so one day that'll be done.
Okay, well, you'll be back to talk about it, and
Sure.
oh, thank you so much for being on, Sonia. I mean,
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for
it
having me.
it's meant so much, and I'm such a big fan of yours, and you're crushing it. I'm so inspired. Two final questions for you. We're finally coming up for air from what was one of the darkest times in recent memory, and it was particularly a very tough time for artists of all kinds,
Mm,
but actors, we witnessed I don't want to say the death, but the permanent pause and the indefinite pause of we didn't know when we might be able to do the thing we
mm,
love again. And particularly we just spoke about theater that's still not back yet.
mm.
What what kept you inspired during the pandemic?
Stories, stories. I couldn't get enough stories in me. Like I say, books and podcasts. I went out into nature every single day. I would just park the kids. I only let them have an hour of screens every day, so I would give them their precious screen time, and I would plug them in, and then I would plug myself into every podcast I could. There's a beautiful one called Poetry Unbound, um, where Padraig Otuma, who's a poet, reads one poem every day and then gives this beautiful little explanation about why he chose it, and he unpacks it. So that one kept me going. This American Life, um, a fantastic one called Things You Were Wrong About, with
Yeah.
a unpacked all the history of Princess Diana and how everyone was wrong about her. Like that, from the highbrow to the lowbrow. I wanted stories in my ear while I walked in nature. So
Yeah.
that was what kept me sane.
That's amazing. And final question, and I apologize because I know it's a tough one, but for all the young, Sonias out there, similar to myself, that don't come from parents that have connections to the industry and are wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and want to get in this business and are watching, whatever their respective version of Grace Kelly is right now and want to pursue this thing. Any words of wisdom you might have for them?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, just keep keep loving as many things as you can. There's such a virtue in really like opening up the word artist to mean as much as it can. So it's not just about that one audition and that, but what is it to live? Really interrogate what it is to live an artistic life. How do you keep feeding that life? How do you keep um, feeding it from all quarters? By going to museums, by listening to podcasts, by sitting on a train and staying alert to what other people are saying rather than being buried in your phone. There are stories everywhere, and you never know where they might lead you. You never know what character you might create out of them. You never know what short story you might create out of them. But staying both porous and open and watering your artistic landscape in all the ways you can. That would be my advice.
That's beautiful. Sonia, it's been such a pleasure. One of the best I've ever had, and you're incredible. I'm gonna make sure that you get a Golden Globe, an Emmy, an Oscar. I'm even gonna throw a Grammy your way because you
That's,
deserve it.
give me the
Best
Grammy. That's
podcast.
what we're
Yeah, yeah,
after.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There we
And
go.
I got so much love for you and so much gratitude. Thank you for coming on
Thank you.
and
Thank you for
and
having me.
and coming on and sharing your journey and please come back when season 3 comes out and I got so much love for you and the best things are yet to come and I'm so excited.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, very much.
So much love, okay?
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Talk soon.